They still whisper about the night I came into the world. The sky over Umanioma was the colour of burnt clay. Even the moon hid its face. Thunder rolled across the hills like the feet of angry spirits, and an eclipse swallowed the last bit of light. In the palace courtyard, the drummers stood frozen, their sticks raised, because the air itself felt heavy with a warning. Inside the Queen's chamber, my mother clutched the edge of the raffia mat, teeth clenched against another wave of pain. The midwife wiped sweat from her brow. "Push, Lolo, push. Annie will be with you," she muttered, but her hands trembled. Everyone in the room could feel something strange pressing in, like a storm about to break. A flash of lightning split the sky just as I slid into the midwife's palms. She gave a startled cry. My mother tried to sit up, weak but desperate. "Is my child breathing?" she whispered. The midwife stepped back, her eyes wide. "Chukwu ekwakwala, God forbid," she murmured. My father, King Ndozi, strode in at that moment, coral beads rattling against his chest. "What's wrong?" he barked. The midwife pointed at the small bundle on the mat. "Ezra, this child," she faltered. The king crouched and peeled back the cloth. There, under the flickering lamp, was a baby girl with skin like polished palm oil, 2 tiny noses breathing as one, and in the center of her forehead, a single dark eye, unblinking, deep as a well. She was not ugly. She was beautiful in a way that unsettled the heart. My father inhaled sharply, then turned his face away as though he had seen a bad omen. My mother reached out, her hands shaking. "Give me my child," she said. The king did not move. She dragged herself across the mat, scooped me up and cradled me against her breast. Her tears fell onto my tiny face. "Chizoram," she whispered. "May God save me. That is your name." "She is a curse," the midwife said under her breath. "Such a child will bring ruin. Hide her before the elders find out." My father's jaw tightened. He rose to his full height, beads clicking like warning stones. "No gongs tonight," he ordered the guards at the door. "Tell the people the Queen is still in labour. No one must know what has happened here." Outside the room, the rain hissed on the thatch. Inside, silence thickened, broken only by my first thin cry. My father flinched at the sound. My mother pressed me closer, humming a lullaby through her tears, a song about a seed hidden in the ground that grows into a mighty tree. That was how my life began. Not with trumpet and dance as befits a princess, but with a father's disgust, a mother's trembling love, and a kingdom already whispering about an abomination born under a shamed sky. Amaka, my sister, came 3 years later. She had skin like powdered camwood, eyes like carved glass, and every feature exactly where it should be. The drums beat for 3 days when she was born. The king lifted her high before the elders and called her the jewel of Umanioma. From that day, the palace sang her name, while mine was never spoken above a whisper. I grew up at the edge of the courtyard, eating with servants, sweeping floors, fetching water from the stream while Amaka sat on our father's lap and learned to read proverbs from the chief priest. People who saw me bent under a clay pot would pause, struck by a strange kind of beauty, then quickly cross themselves and hurry away. Even as a child, I learned how quietly a heart can break, and how to hide the breaking behind a smile. I didn't yet know my father's shame would one day turn to cruelty, or that the same cruelty would drive me into the wilderness where destiny waited. For now there was only the echo of that first night, thunder, eclipse, rumours, and a baby with 2 noses and 1 eye staring up at a world that already wished she wasn't there. I do not remember a day in my childhood when my father's eyes softened at the sight of me. The palace was wide and filled with laughter, but none of that laughter belonged to me. My world was the back kitchen where the servants pounded yam, the smoky corridor behind the Queen's chambers, the long trek to the stream with a clay pot balanced on my head. From the time I could walk, my place was with the servants. I wore plain wrappers cut from leftover cloth, my hair plaited quickly and without care. The maids who dressed my sister called me Nwanjo behind their hands, the ugly one, even though I saw their eyes linger on me in secret, unsettled. She looks like a goddess carved from Morocco, one would murmur when she thought I could not hear. But Ani marks her for something dark. Then they would spit twice to ward off evil. Amaka, on the other hand, glided through the palace in silk wrappers, strings of beads clinking softly at her wrists. When she laughed, people laughed with her. When she cried, my father's arms were open before the first tear could fall. She had a room perfumed with camwood and fresh mats woven just for her. She learned to sing folk songs for the festivals, to pour palm wine gracefully at council meetings, to recite proverbs like a chief priest's son. I learned to scrub the soot from cooking pots until my fingers cracked. I learned to walk with my eyes lowered so the guards would not mock me. When I fetched water from the stream, children of the village would follow at a distance, whispering and throwing small stones. "Spirit child," they called. Abomination. Yet some nights, when the moon was high, I caught them staring at me, as if drawn by something they did not understand. They would stop mid-whisper, caught between fear and wonder, and run off, giggling nervously. Even my mother's love was a secret thing. She would pull me into her arms late at night when everyone else slept, rocking me gently, whispering prayers into my hair. "Chizaram, you are not a curse," she would say. "Your life is hidden like a seed. One day, it will bloom." But at dawn she had to push me away before my father woke, and the look on her face then hurt more than the servants' mockery. Once during the New Yam Festival, I stood at the edge of the square carrying a tray of kola nuts for the guests. Amaka sat on a raised stool beside my father, wearing a beaded crown too big for her small head. The sun caught her bangles and made them flash like little suns. As the drums began, she rose and danced, her feet barely touching the earth. The crowd clapped and ululated. My father's smile was wide and proud. I balanced the tray in my hands, unseen, until a gust of wind lifted the wrapper from my head and my single eye met the crowd. A hush fell over the nearest people. Some crossed themselves, some turned away. One old woman whispered, "Ani's daughter walks among us." Before I could slip back into the shadows, a boy tossed a groundnut shell at my feet and hissed, "Ekwensu's wife!" Laughter broke the silence. I bent my head and kept walking. That night I lay awake on my raffia mat behind the kitchen. The drumming from the square drifted over the walls, muffled and sweet. I pressed my palms over my strange face and tried to imagine what it would feel like to sit on my father's lap, to have him tell me I had danced well. But the only lap I had known was my mother's, and even that belonged to me only in the dark. So I learned to hold my back straight, to swallow my tears until they turned to stone inside me. I told myself that stones sink, but seeds sprout. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, I felt a path was waiting for my feet. Somewhere a story was beginning where I was not a shame, but a sign. The air of Umanioma village smelled of roasted yam and palm oil. Drums rolled like distant thunder, and the copper bells on masquerade's ankles jingled like spirits laughing. The masquerade festival had always been the one day I could slip into the crowd without being noticed, if I was careful. I tied an old wrapper high around my chest and draped a shawl across my face so only my single eye peeped out. My heart hammered as I left the palace through the back path, where the banana trees grew thick. Beyond the fence, the world was alive with colour. Women in wrappers patterned like birds' wings, men with aura flutes at their lips, children dancing barefoot and wild. The whole village seemed to be a drum that day, pulsing and alive. Masquerades burst from the square one after another, their raffia skirts swishing, their wooden masks painted in fierce reds and whites. They leapt, whirled, brandished whips, and the people screamed with delight. The heat, the noise, the smell of dust rising beneath dancing feet, it all wrapped around me until I forgot who I was. When the chief drummer's hands began a new rhythm, something inside me loosened. My feet moved before my mind did. I slipped into the circle of dancers, shawl still hiding my face, and let my body follow the drum. Step and stamp, sway and whirl, the world narrowed to movement, to the sound of beads and bells and the drum's heartbeat. For the first time in my life, the crowd clapped for me. They did not see a princess with two noses and one eye. They saw a girl who danced like fire. "Who is she?" someone shouted. "She moves like the river spirit." Hands clapped in rhythm. Someone threw cowries at my feet. Children squealed and tried to imitate my steps. The joy that rose in my chest was so bright it frightened me. For a heartbeat, I tasted freedom, a world where no one whispered abomination, where I was not hidden in kitchens and back corridors but stood in the open, celebrated. But freedom is a slippery thing. My shawl slipped as I spun, and for one terrible moment, the cloth fell away from my face. The drums faltered. Gasps rose like a wind. "Annie's child!" an old man hissed. "Cover her face!" A woman dragged her child back. Someone crossed himself and spat. I snatched the shawl up and ran, the cowries scattering behind me. My heart beat faster than the drums, shame burning where the joy had been. The festival noise faded as I fled through the bush path back to the palace. By the time I reached my raffia mat, the taste of freedom had turned to salt on my lips. Yet lying awake in the dark, I felt something new inside me. Even in that brief moment, I had danced and the crowd had cheered. They had called me river spirit. They had not known me, yet they had loved me. That memory glowed like a coal under ashes. Shame could smother it, but it could not put it out. That night, the palace smelled of harmattan dust and palm oil lamps. The drums from the festival had died, but in the king's chamber another rhythm was beating the sound of his foot tapping impatiently on the floor. I did not know it then, but while I lay curled on my raffia mat, still trembling from the shame of the festival, my father was making a decision that would cut me out of his life. Obi Ezeonu, king of Umanioma, sat on his leopard skin stool with his head bent, fingers digging into the armrest. "Enough," he muttered to himself. "Enough of this disgrace." In front of him knelt Okoro, his most trusted bodyguard, a man whose eyes were as cold as the blade he carried. The flickering lamp made Okoro's shadow huge against the mud walls. "You will take her tonight," the king said at last, voice low and rough. "Take her far into the wilderness. Do not let her find her way back." Okoro lifted his head slowly. "Your Majesty, she is your blood." "She is a blemish on my throne," the king snapped. "A curse on my lineage. Do you question me?" Okoro bowed again. "I will do as you command." Beyond the carved door, the queen had been listening. When Okoro left by the back corridor, she burst into the room, wrappers slipping from her shoulders. Her face was wet with tears. "My husband," she cried, "you cannot do this to our daughter. She has done nothing but be born the way she is. The gods gave her to us." "The gods mock me," he said, not looking at her. "The people mock me. Do you not hear their whispers? I have spared her long enough." The queen dropped to her knees. "If you send her away, you will kill me too. Please, she is a child. She will not survive the bush at night." The king's jaw clenched. For a heartbeat, his eyes softened, but then his mouth hardened again. "Go back to your room, Nenna. This is a man's decision." She reached for his ankle. He stepped away. "The throne must be clean," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "Our other daughter will carry the line. This one must go." The queen staggered back as though struck. She tried to run after Okoro, but 2 guards blocked her path at the courtyard. She could only stand there trembling, watching as a shadow slipped through the back gate towards the girls' quarters.